let's talk about realms. So I have been insisting on a lot of abstract philosophical stuff that most of you are not used to it. It sounds like it's disconnected from your life, from reality, from the problems you encounter, from the problems you think you will encounter as a psychologist, as whatever you choose to do. And I am this, and you cannot prove anything, and the infinite. So let me explain why I think it's very useful. I'll start with an example. In the next lecture or lectures, one of the things we'll talk about is the difference between correlation and causation and causality. You probably already heard, you probably already learned that we cannot prove causality in anything. We can only see correlations. For example, all of us have seen perfect correlation between something that is left floating in the air and its movement down, right? We explain it, so we see perfect correlation, and we have a lot of stories. We explain it that there is gravity and it's pulling, and gravity is a function of mass and density. Okay. Can we prove that it is gravity, that there is a force pulling it? Can we prove that, can we refute the possibility that every time something is left on air, God is throwing it to the ground? Or any other explanation, whatever you want. Can we prove, can we refute a mediating force, a mediating explanation between the two factors? We see correlation between two events. Every time we see perfect correlation. Every time this happens, this happens. This comes after. We see perfect correlation. And then we propose a story, a narrative that connects between these two events in time. And then so gravity, we have been living for a long time with this story. Can we prove? Can we prove that there is nothing between, that this is causing that? Can we refute something in between, mediating, that every time this happens, something else happens, and that something else that we are not aware causes this to happen? No, we cannot. And then you tell me, okay, he's back with the philosophy, with all the in my daily life, I don't have to worry about if gravity is done by leprechauns or the sun. Okay. Let's say an alien arrives to Earth. An alien that is a scientist. He's like us. He knows what we know, but some things, like whatever, an alien, okay? So an alien comes and and this alien goes to a school. It's a known allegory, what I'm going to say. Goes to a school, and then he calculates how much children know mathematics and the size of their shoes. What he will find, the alien, male alien, so the alien will find a very strong correlation between knowledge in mathematics and the size of the shoe. Is the shoe, the size of the shoe, causing knowledge, increasing knowledge in mathematics? Obviously not. If you take a 5-year-old child and you put a 11 size shoe, Same mathematics. Is knowledge in mathematics increasing the size of the shoe? Obviously not. Does the alien know that? So this alien doesn't know. All this alien sees is a very strong correlation. We are very familiar with this realm, and then we say, it's because two independent processes are caused by time, by age. So the child gets older, learns more, and the size gets bigger. Okay. So this mediating, that for us is obvious, this mediating variable is unknown to the alien. Now, for you, when I talk about all these philosophical things and I give examples of a familiar realm to you, you say, how is that practically relevant for me? So I'll tell you how. When you arrive to unfamiliar realms. So, you are a physicist, and then you are looking at the photons and the bourbons and the quarkers, and they move like this, and they do like that, and they do like that, and every time, and you find a correlation somewhere. How do you know that whatever you saw is not mediated by the quarks? That's a huge question. It's a realm that you don't know. We know a lot about mechanics, physics on Earth, Newtonian physics. Suddenly we moved to physics not on Earth or within atoms, and suddenly it doesn't work. And then you tell me, no, but I am a psychologist. So everything I am insisting is because it will be useful once these dynamics are clear. For instance, correlation, mediation, causation, assumption, in metaphysics, and I'll explain it soon. Then when you get to realms that you are less familiar, you are aware of these traps, processes, questions, challenges. Okay. What about familiar realms? This is the other side of the coin. It's sometimes even more problematic for a scientist, because when we are dealing with a realm that we feel familiar, we are much more biased, much more blind to possible things that we are unaware. For instance, in nutrition, in the last years, there is a revolution in terms of understanding processes as a function of the biosystem, the ecosystem of bacteria inside our tract, inside our digestive system. So until not long ago, or maybe until there are foods that we say no, or some behaviors, or some foods, or some no, this is not good. This is not good for your stomach. Why? Because we have seen for hundreds of years, I don't know, a strong correlation between the ingestion of a given food or a given combination or food with a certain behavior and some symptoms, some result, undesired, let's say, so we have been observing this strong correlation, this stable correlation for a lot of time, and we feel absolutely familiar, comfortable with the story we are saying. And only now we are discovering that that food specifically has no problem. Everything is mediated by the bacteria or certain behavior or some combination. And a person that has been suffering from a undesired symptom that until today we explained by doing this or eating that, suddenly by changing the ecosystem of bacteria inside that person's stomach, no problem, the symptom disappears, and what was considered a no-no, suddenly the person can eat, can do it, etc. Okay. And by the way, you probably have heard that there are one of the ways that we deal with the ecosystem, with the bacteria inside. One of the pictorial, it's what in we transplant feces from one person to the other. And in the feces there is this ecosystem of bacteria. In Latin it's called, the term is Mangia la merda che te fa bene. That means eat shit, it's good for you. Why I am insisting on metaphysics? Because when one of the things that happened in science is that metaphysics or metaphysical particles, metaphysical arguments or metaphysical movements, they get entangled within a familiar realm. For instance, let's say that tomorrow someone claims that our soul doesn't happen, our self is not in the brain, but it is, and the brain is only a mediator to an electromagnetic field that exists around us, that it's equilibrium, blah, 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 and then through the brain, and then we are who we are as a function of that electromagnetic field. That we already know that we have an electromagnetic field. We didn't find any connection to anything, but it's there, we know it is. So in the same way that we discovered that the bacteria inside our digestive system, let's say that tomorrow someone claims that this electromagnetic field everything is explained by that and not the brain. It sounds plausible. It sounds pretty much scientific. It sounds a reasonable proposition if we have a empirical, logical hint, etc., etc. Now, let's compare that proposition to the proposition that we are marionettes of little children in the planet Zorg or whatever metaphysical explanation. So this sounds not relevant it's not part of the way we say. So both are, let's say that we don't have a hint for the electromagnetic field. Both are equally metaphysical. We have no hint for either, but obviously we will feel, because of familiarity, we may start adopting, especially if it's only parts and if it's a gray area, just like Mother Nature. We sometimes get confused, wait, and we don't have body hair because we don't use it, because nature is improving us. So, so when I talk about the big examples of metaphysics, about God, and exaggerate for something that is obviously not practical, it's for us to train and understand, and tomorrow, when it appears as a nuance, we can recognize it, because it comes hidden. It comes hidden behind familiar words that sound logic, and it's difficult. I'm not saying it's a little bit everywhere, but it's not something like nobody's claiming that there is. Well, some are, but anyways, we will. I know. You have been asking, give me an example, and I have been not giving examples. I gave an example of the little man in the head that some people said I don't want to hear about it. The others, no, explain better. We'll get there. It's less important for me to say exactly where, in my opinion, this is half metaphysical, maybe metaphysical. I will on the way raise that question whether there is a metaphysical color to some explanation or other. What's important is for you to understand the problem with metaphysics and how it looks like and how it may appear. Okay. Unfamiliar realms, familiar realms. Unfamiliar realms, we have to know the steps by training. Familiar realms, we are blind. Cognition and perception, the human system. Whatever happens here, or whatever it happens, it has the worst of both worlds. It is at the same time extremely familiar, because is there something that I know better than myself? That's what we feel. We have introspection. We have, so it's the most memories. Who knows about my memory? So it's extremely familiar. So we have a very dangerous familiarity, which means that we have biases all the time lurking, and at the same time, it's completely unfamiliar. We don't know. We don't understand. We don't even know where it happens. We still today, we don't really understand what is a unit of memory. We don't know what is memory storage. We don't... Memory! The psychophysical question. My brain, my body, the things that happen to me, and this feeling, this self, my identity. We don't know. This is the mother of the questions. We still don't know anything. So everything that I have been insisting is because we are dealing with the most problematic realms from which we suffer from the realm problem, the familiarity and the unfamiliarity. And that's why I've been insisting so much about this stuff. Yes. And also because I really like talking about it. Okay, I admit. Now, what I wanted to say is like this. We started to talk about science as a technique. So one possible definition, one difference between philosophy and science is that they both use the same main tools: logic, most of all, agreed upon standards. If it's communication methods, it must be agreed upon. Okay. But one big difference is that philosophy deals with realms we are familiar, and science ventures, not only, but ventures into unfamiliar realms. But in a sense, it's the same. Science is apart from philosophy, a very specific part. By the way, I just remembered in lecture 4, I talked about global warming, and it sounded as if I am claiming or implying that global warming is a random, natural, I don't like this word, later we'll talk about it, but as if it's not human beings doing it. I absolutely don't imply that. I don't know. I know what you guys know, and if I have to choose a side, absolutely, I trust all the scientific community, and I believe the conclusions they are reaching. Let's go back to evolution a little bit, just to close it. Now, first of all, everything that I have been promising you, that to use my interpretation of the theory of evolution, which is randomness and passiveness, to explain everything, society, human emotions, everything, I will, but in a complementary video. Let me explain what are these complementary videos that I plan to put. It's like this. For whoever wants to watch, but who doesn't feel like, you can not watch and you will not miss anything. You won't miss the rationale, the train. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Okay, you can jump. The complementary videos that I will put, you will be able to just jump and continue with the non-complementary, and you understand everything. So all these things that I promised about explaining, okay. What I want to, by the way, worst case scenario, if I don't feel better, and I will send you those videos even after the semester. I promise. I hate to use this word, but I promise. Bottom line, what I want you to remember, to understand, the main concept about everything I talked about evolution is like this. By using randomness with the concepts, by combining the ideas of randomness and passiveness, we can explain everything without resorting to a master plan, to the assumption of a master plan. We can describe everything under the title by chance. It doesn't mean it's the true story. It doesn't mean that everything happened by chance. I don't know. I'm just saying that with randomness and passiveness, there is an explanation that holds, that is sound, that is logic, that doesn't assume anything that we don't understand. We cannot predict. Okay, when we get to Popper, we understand better why it's not a theory, because it can, and it's not a theory because it cannot predict, and we cannot falsify. It has no hypothesis which we can check, but that's later. Now, from the moment you understand that we can explain things without having to anchor in anything that we don't understand, we are free. We are free to go everywhere. We are free to defend ourselves from every time something that sounds or walks or smells a little bit metaphysical. We can, I don't need it. I don't need it. So this is what is important from all this story. We are free when we try to understand how the mind, how the brain, how we think. We don't have to explain. We don't have to get lost trying to explain why. We don't have to get lost trying to anchor on functionality, on logic. We are free to just observe and try to understand how it works, not why it works. We can, but we don't have to. And in the moment that we have inside, like enough inside our intuition, that we don't need it, and that's why there's so much about it, because I want it to be inside you. I want you to feel that every time we try, and now the whys are dangerous. They're not forbidden, no problem with that. But they are dangerous. And we are clean, we can go straight ahead when we try to describe what exists. We try to understand, to describe the mechanisms behind, and not try to explain why they exist. Okay. Let's start counting our chickens. I am melting here. Yeah. Rabbit hole. Rabbit hole is a story that humankind haven't been able to find one anchor for knowledge that everybody agrees on. We will talk more about complementary King Solomon, but for now, check. Second thing, the idea that when we don't understand something doesn't mean there is something to be understood. We got it, right? Check. Our attraction to metaphysics. Yes, it's already clear. We need order. I gave so many examples. Okay, we are trying to understand. Okay. We are... there will be some more... Okay. Next. The story about the questions. Every time we feel we have an answer, it's time to ask a better question. You are getting familiar to that. I still haven't demonstrated, and I will. But intuitively, you are okay with that, because if we stop asking questions, it doesn't sound good. It's our science. We must always ask more questions. Okay, so you are okay with that. We will understand better. And I think it's becoming clear why metaphysics is a problem. Because it stops us from asking more questions. It answers something. And it answers by making us admit and accept that we don't understand, that there is something we don't understand. In the moment you accept it, and it is what it is, and then you accept something metaphysical, and then you have an answer, and then you stop asking. Okay, that's a problem. I will still have another demonstration of that, but you already feel comfortable with that story. And again, very important, it is useful for many things. And it serves us for many things, just not for science. The trade-off. Narratives, the more we adopt, the more we use, the more we feel comfortable with the useful narrative, the less we understand better. Okay, I still haven't fully explained, but you already feel, you know where it is going. Because if every narrative, every story, every proposal about the connection between events a long time, they are temporary. We don't know until when, but they are temporary for sure, because everything is changing randomly and we cannot predict how things will change. Then, what I was saying? Then you understand why it's temporary, why it's a proposal, why it's tentative. And you also understand now why narratives are not true. Because nobody found a anchor for true knowledge that everybody agrees. And every proposed prediction, story, narrative that wants to predict things is temporary, so it's not true. Okay. We are getting more comfortable with all those parts. The story about religion and science. So there is so much to talk about it. It's endless. It's entire fields of philosophy. You know that. But I hope that I a little bit answered why I claimed that there is no conflict. I gave two reasons. One, that science, our technique, our current technique of science, cannot refute any metaphysical explanation, description, narrative, story. But the technique works better by staying away from anything that we don't understand, as long as we have an alternative, that we don't have to adopt something we don't understand, which is the story about everything happens by chance. Okay, so it's not that science looks at religion and says, this is wrong. Science looks at religion and says, as long as I have Sorry. In order for me, a good scientist, to adopt this story, I need something. In the meantime, I am using this one that is very restricted. Yes, very, very poor. Doesn't explain a lot of things, or doesn't explain vividly a lot of things. Let's put it this way. The idea that everything is by chance doesn't solve our existentialist hole in our soul. We don't know why we are here. We don't know why we exist, for what we exist. We don't know anything. So yeah, it's not a comfort, it's not a happy option. But science is humble, is suspicious. But science cannot refute. The second reason I gave is that the technique of science is the smallest possible, and metaphysics is the answer to everything. It's two different words. I just thought about a third way to explain the difference between religion and science. Science tries to predict, religion explains. Science asks, religion answers. The story about prediction, we'll see later why I have been claiming today that science cannot understand, doesn't try to understand, only tries to predict. What else? So the things that I owe you. I owe you the story about prediction and not understanding. I owe you an explanation why the technique science works best. The smaller the realm, the smaller the word you're trying to describe, to predict, the smaller the step, the better it works. We will understand that fully. And where we want to end is Popper, falsifiability, replicability. I hope you're starting to feel the connection to cognition and perception. I hope you're starting to feel why all this detour. This detour is to prepare you better for when you read the book, or we read together, for all the Gaddafis, for all the papers you read. Now you already start to have intuitions about prediction, about the world, about realms, about why science is, a scientist can never say scientifically proven. You will faster than you think see that you will find the main question in the papers you are going to read much faster. What did I say? I'll say it again. With all the story, and in the next 2-3 lectures, I hope, suddenly you will start to understand the whole thing together. And then when you read a paper and you try to find what is the question, what is the theoretical question, what is the translation, what is going on, it will be easier for this course and all the rest when you start to think about your proposal, the EDM. You will have much more tools because of this long introduction, even though we haven't yet started talking about the mechanisms of the textbook. I hope you agree with me. I truly hope. I hope, I'm sure I'm sorry that it was long, and I probably was not very sharp, and I didn't talk organized. Next lecture, I will talk about I and Chelsea. We'll talk about science, we'll talk about papers, we'll do zoom in and things that are relevant for the EDM and for the Gaddafis. See you soon, if I survive.